Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Friday's webinar from Annika Digital. It's myself, Anne Stanley, today, and I'm really pleased to welcome a guest. We've got Neil Collard. So, morning, Neil.
Good morning, Anne.
So, Neil and I are not in the Midlands today. So, I'm down in sunny Cornwall, and you're in Bristol, I believe.
I'm in Bristol, yeah, but I'm checking it's less sunny now, actually, as the sun goes by.
That's not very good. That's not very good. So what we're going to do is, while we're waiting for a few people to arrive before you start your presentation, I'm going to do a couple of polls. Hopefully everybody can hear us okay. And I'd just like to say, once Neil starts, there is two little arrows top right, which will allow you to expand your screen. Also, if you've just arrived now, you will get the video in a little while. And also you can download the handouts, which is top right above the chat. So without further ado, then let's go and start the polls. So I've got two polls to start first of all. So the first one is about what you currently do. So hopefully you should be able to see it on the screen. So what is your current role in marketing? I'm currently a student. I'm not working in marketing role at the moment. We have got quite a lot of students attending the webinars at the moment. I'm self-employed and run my own business. I'm employed and working on my own in marketing. I'm employed and working in a marketing team. I'm a freelancer and work for other, that was meant to say for other businesses, sorry. So I'm a freelancer and work for other business. I mean, you could work for other agencies as well. I work for an agency. So it's taking a little while, there's quite a lot of people in the room, just taking a little while for people to find the, it's about 60 people in the room. So a few people doing the poll now. So as I sort of expected, you've got about 41%, around 40% self-employed. Oh, Neil's just disappeared. Hopefully he'll come back again in a second. And then you've got about 20% work in a marketing team. I'm guessing they're working for slightly larger businesses. And then there's a couple of people that are working for an agency or working freelancer. So the numbers have shifted around a little bit, and we've got about 27% actually working are a student, and they're not working in marketing at the moment. Okay, let's try another poll. So Neil is going to be talking about a subject called search generative experience, or SGE. I'm hoping he's going to come back in the room. Hopefully he's not lost his internet connection. So I want to know if any of you have actually heard of search generative experience, which is a new experimental side of Google. So the first question is, I have no idea what this is. I think it's about search engines and AI, and I have actually tried it. So as we expected, there's a huge amount of people that have no idea what it is. So that's about 60%. And we've got about 30% think it's about search engines and AI. Of course, it does say search in the title, which is a little bit of a giveaway. And there's about 10% of you have actually tried it. So I'll be really interested to know how you've got on with it in the chat. Now, I'm now panicking, wondering what's happened to Neil. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just quickly see if I can call him and find out where he is. I assume that he's going to come back online at any second. So bear with me. If while we're waiting, if any of you could possibly put in the chat if you have tried it, that'd be really great to know that. Okay, I think we've got a bit of a technical hitch because Neil is here, and I am just waiting for him to re-log in. So yeah, no sound was deliberate, so don't worry about that. Yes, Beth, I am here. I just turned my mic off while I was getting Neil back. Yeah, there you are. Okay, we can see you again. Thank Christ for
I
that.
thought I was here the whole time. I was most curious when you were saying that I'd gone, and I'm away.
Anyway, we always have a few technical glitches every now and again. But if you'd like to share your slides, just to let you know, around 60. Thank you. That's exactly how I feel, Michael. And everybody said, "Woohoo, you're back." So if you'd like to share your slides, Neil, and then you can introduce yourself. Brilliant. So everybody should be able to see the slides now. And if you go top right, you'll be able to increase the slide with the little arrows. So I'm going to turn my camera off, and then I'll make sure everything's okay. Then I'll turn my mic off. So over to you now, Neil.
Awesome. Thank you, Anne. And thank you for filling those polls. I got that figure that 60% of people have not used or not seen search generative experience before. So hopefully this is going to be terribly interesting for that 60%, and for the others as well. Hopefully there'll be some deepening knowledge about what this is and what this means. So let me just dive in terms of this wonderful world that we're going to experience here. In terms of context, when I talk about generative experience, I am talking about SGE in the Google sense. So Google have launched a project called SGE, and I'm going to be focusing mostly on that, the background behind that, and where we expect that to be going. This is an updated version of a speech that I delivered at the Leicester Digital Live conference with Annika back in October. So that was October. There's new news since then. There has been some updates, so I will cover that. But for those who weren't there, this is a way of getting well grounded in what I believe is going to be quite a significant development in the world of search. So a bit of background. I'm going to cover 3 areas, which is general direction of travel in terms of what we're seeing as use of generative AI in that whole search experience, and where we can, from that, where we can kind of make our predictions about likely implications about where things are going to go, what the impact is likely to be on organic traffic, and also what the impact is likely to be on paid traffic as well. And then to respond to that, what are the tactics and strategies that we can employ as organizations to mitigate the impact or potentially to win in that kind of brave new world that we will see out there, okay? As a bit of background, I have about 25 years experience in agency side, in digital agency side, 10 years running a business called Great State. Now, most of that is in the digital product space, website space, as opposed to performance marketing space. But I'm now more of a commentator, I suppose, in terms of AI within that digital agency group. I've been looking at and thinking about AI in the digital agency landscape for about 4 years now. So looking back to quite primitive tools some 4 years ago and what one can do within that space. A couple of years ago, I went back to school, sort of learning Python and data science, developing my own machine learning products. I now work with an organization called GYDA, who are called Grow Your Digital Agency. And we are a collection of growth agency experts. So we work with founders and owners of digital agencies, and we help them to grow the agencies that they want to run. We have about 100 clients across 20 countries. And we are also a key Google partner as well. So we deliver, as an organization, we deliver training to Google and to Google Premier partners as well in the areas of growth. And so we're sort of lucky in as much as we have many conversations with Google and different agencies as well about impact of new technologies, and hopefully I can share some of that today, although it should be noted that Google are quite tight-lipped about SGE and what developments are within that realm. As I say, I mostly work with as an AI consultant. I help clients, mostly agencies, to benefit from AI in terms of how they can integrate within that business, work as a fractional AI officer, etc. So my views and comments here are more as industry observations as opposed to a deep technical expert in the world of search. So if you have questions around that, I'm sure Anne will be able to help with those later. Cool. Today on the FOG scale, fact, opinion, guesswork, what I'm going to be talking about is mostly in the opinion space. There are limited facts about this, so I'm going to be pulling upon my years of experience in terms of working out sort of ideally what's going on here and sharing my views and opinions about that with everybody in the room. So let me begin with direction of travel in terms of where do we think things are going and why do we think they may be going in that particular direction. Okay, so context here is, we're going to be looking at what is driving change, going to be making some hopefully informed guesses about what the near future looks like and how generative search is going to work and how that's going to impact. So I start with a number, and the number is a big number. It's $162 billion, and this is ad revenue for Google in 2022. And the stakes here, the reason I include this number is because the stakes are really high. That number is ludicrously large. I did a calculation, and it will take you about 45,000 years to count up to 162 billion. So the numbers that we're talking about here are ridiculous, and these are how large the stakes are in terms of changes to, Google and the whole search experience. Because not only are there, $160 billion of income for Google, there's also impacts potentially anywhere between 700 billion and 3 trillion in global trade. That is trade that goes via Google for e-commerce and other products as well. So the stakes are incredibly high when you start to change the whole search experience on a global level. And this is kind of really what we're playing with here in terms of these conversations. And of course, as things are, the status quo largely works for everyone in terms of how they are. There's a readily available market for everyone to be able to access and to promote their products. Oh, it's doing the thumbs up thing. I get that quite a lot on Google Hangouts. So the status quo as things are at the moment works well. You have this readily available market. It's very well developed, so it allows advertisers to understand marketing activity in extraordinary detail and effectively to buy customers. There are imposed costs, but also users understand how the world works. So the current 10 blue links that we experience around search is a good mechanic in terms of how the world works. But as Winston Churchill once said, I'm going to mangle this quote: democracy is the worst form of government except for all the other forms that we've tried from time to time. And I think it's the same with search engines. So the worst form of access to information online, except for everything else that we've been tried from time to time. And of course, things are about to change now, and things really changed last year in terms of exploring different ways of accessing, because we've had 20 years of 10 blue links in terms of how that works. Because now ChatGPT is here. And when ChatGPT launched, back in November or so, 15 months or so ago now, it did change things dramatically. And it changed things in two ways. Firstly, it changed the generation of content. And that use of generative AI in content has massively accelerated, content that appears online that needs to be searched. So from a search point of view, what this means is that in many ways for the user, the needle is the same size, but the haystack keeps going. So there's a problem in terms of search, in terms of finding relevant and authoritative knowledge and content that we are looking for. But the area that I really want to focus on is how generative AI has impacted search results and how that model works. Because what generative AI enables us to do is that we can use clever tech to do the work for us, to dig through that large haystack and find out the information that we need, that we desire when we go online. I'm going to give a few examples here about how this world is changing and how it's evolving for context before we start to look at Google in particular and what their world looks like. So this is the old world that we know and that we understand. This is the 10 blue links within Google. So if I ask it a simple question in terms of, can you recommend a good day out for a family with a dog? It will come back with this list of things. And we know this and we accept this. And if we take that earlier quote, this is the best model we've got until something else comes along. And we're all used to this and more familiar with this. And as marketeers, we can market into this environment and promote our products and services. And as users, we can find the product or service that we're looking to find as well. So this works. But then once ChatGPT launched, if you ask the same question to ChatGPT, you get a very different response, but frankly, a far more useful response, where if you're looking for a day out in a particular city, you get a whole itinerary plan for you that is sensitive to what you've told it. I've got a dog, so where can we go with the dog, and lots of other stuff around that as well. It is my view that the GPT, that the generative AI solution to that particular query is far superior to the old-fashioned 10 blue links. Yeah. And I think that's like unequivocal as a statement. So generative AI, if it offers a better experience, it is going to change the search landscape. And we've seen this. So early on, Bing were quite aggressive in terms of how they used and how they integrated generative AI into their search experience. Obviously, they had a bit of a head start with their connection with OpenAI, but they moved quite quickly to use that and to integrate that and to start to offer users a much better experience within search. And they benefited from this. And there's reports of tenfold increase from use of the Bing app and download of the Bing app. I believe it was listed as the 12th most popular free app at one point as well. I'm aware that Bing is starting from a low base, but it does show how users were willing to embrace generative AI and to seek out those experiences and those search experiences because they were better. And we continue to see Bing explore this with Copilot in terms of how things are at the moment. So this creates a bit of a problem for Google, okay? Because if generative AI within search offers a better user experience, then they are likely to face some degree of user defection. It's important to note, of course, that Google rose to prominence because it was a better experience for users than, frankly, Yahoo was the dominant partner at that time. So a better user experience is a real risk for Google. And that risk is that falling revenues. There's 162 billion reasons, of course, why Google should be concerned about this. So they have this quandary about user defection, falling revenues, and potentially increased cost as well, because it costs more to serve a generative answer than it does a straight answer as well. Numbers I've seen is between 1 or 2 cents to generate a generative AI answer. So that's the problem that Google faced. Hence, they have responded. So in May of last year, 10th of May last year, they announced the launch of this thing called Google Search Generative Experience, SGE. It is, I think, a really clumsy name for what is, I think, a really big development. That was announced in May of last year. So we are talking 8 months ago that this was first launched. And what Google SGE does is it generates brand new content totally unique to the individual search. So it's a bit like snippets, but it's a vast leap forward. And it is mimicking in many ways the Bing experience that I've just showed, and also the ChatGPT experience as well. It also gives you the ability to ask follow-up questions from that as well. It's available as a trial in Google Labs. So if you use Google Labs, you can go into there and you can see it. At the time in May, it was only available in the US market. So if you do want to play with and explore Google SGE, you'll need a VPN to VPN into the US market. And you will also need to log in on a private Gmail account as opposed to a corporate account as well. But in there, if you click the Labs icon, you'll be able to play this and you'll be able to experience what this looks like and work it out for your business as well. So that was in May that initially launched in the US market. In August, that trial was extended to India and Japan. The feeling I get from commentators, is that was to explore different languages, so Hindi and Japanese. In November, there was then a larger rollout to a further 120 markets in Latin and South America, and also Africa and Asia Pacific as well. And also more languages were extended to that as well. As of today, it is still only available in labs. So this has not been launched to the wild world out there. And it is not available in the EU yet, even in that lab state, as I say, apart from kind of VPN access by cheating the system. General views are that that's kind of privacy around EU is a bit more challenging, and huge ad revenues, of course, in the EU market is a problem for them. But fundamentally, as I'm about to show, it is going to be a big difference. And it is telling, I believe, that it's taken 8 months to go from launching this or announcing the launch of this to it still not being live in the world, indeed still not being available in labs in the EU marketplace as well, when one considers that Bing turned this around very quickly. And I think, as I come onto this, I think it's the impact of this on search and on user behavior is a bit of a headache for Google in terms of the impact it will have on ad revenues and click-throughs as well. Before we talk about that, let me introduce what it is and how it works. So here's a screen grab of that, asking the simple question in terms of what's the best, conference within Leicester. And fortunately, it comes up with Annika's conference in LDL. Instead of just coming up with 10 links, it comes up with this box at the beginning where it gives AI-generated content that it writes on the fly. It has in this area in the top right space, main sources are linked here. So these are different from what appears in the search engine results page. and often they're not the same content as that. So in this realm, if that's your search page now in the new future, the game is to try and be in that top right hand space, as opposed to potentially being in the top 10 links. As you go through the content within each individual space, there are citations. So this removes the risk of hallucinations or consumer fear around hallucinations, because it has citations that go through to the actual content and to the actual web page. So as a user, you can kind of click on those links and you can go through to that. At the bottom, it gives you the opportunity to ask follow-up questions. Some of those are prompted, but there's also an open box there as well. So you can ask whatever follow-up questions that you choose to answer. And it has memory as well, so it remembers the context of your question in the context of the original search that you give as well. And then it just transforms to a standard Bard GPT chat functions. It doesn't use Bard, it uses a different large language model, but effectively that's how that works. And then the traditional links effectively appear below that box. So in essence, it's the standard search engine results page, and at the top you get this expansion of this SGE. Okay. What is the? I just pick up Victoria, your chat. I'm trying to talk and sort of read some of the comments as well. Hallucination risk is quite low because it has citations, so it links through to the actual content as well. Having worked with Google quite closely in terms of some of their prompt engineering team as well, they're doing a much better job in terms of minimizing hallucinations around this as well. So I think that would be a significant concern, I think. That if it was hallucinating in terms of these results, and they're working very hard, and I think being quite effective in terms of mitigating those concerns. So good question. I don't think we need to be terribly concerned about hallucinations in these results. The slides I've just shown there are from October. There have been developments since October with the user interface. Indeed, between May and October, there were many kind of iterations. They're clearly trying things and using things in different ways as they go through. So this is it currently now presents in many different ways. So it can say, you know, do you want? Sometimes it gives you the little box to say, do you want the generative experience, or do you just want to go through? Sometimes it gives you like a little mini hint of what that generative experience might be, and then you can click on the button to expand that. And then sometimes it gives you the full experience as well. So depending on the search query, and I guess just depending on, you know, multivariate testing or whatever else they may be doing, they're clearly playing around with different experiences. The consistency seems to be any content that is presented has a citation attached to it, and there seems to be a carousel in the top right hand corner of multiple sites that it references along the way. And it retains the ability to engage with chat and ongoing conversation, again with memory for that. So where next, and where are we now? Google, you know, Google are not talking to us. Now, we're a key partner of Google, and they're not saying anything to us. So everybody that we talk to within the organization is very tight-lipped. So I think they're being incredibly cautious. You know, clearly they have large amounts of ad revenue which are on the line within this as well. You know, commentators back in October were predicting, you know, rollout in early 2024. The general view I get is that this rollout is going to be, you know, 3 months time, and a rolling 3 months time as well. I do not believe it's been shown anywhere in the live environment. It's only available within labs. It's also my opinion, and the opinion of many in the industry as well, that this is likely to have a bigger impact than BERT, or indeed any other update. And the reason is because it doesn't just impact the ranking and the order of the rankings, but the very concept of rankings as well within the whole search experience. You know, we work very hard, you know, for our clients to kind of boost them and get them high up in the rankings. But if people aren't even getting to those, you know, to that content, this zero-click concept where people just don't click on anything, then actually it changes the whole experience around Google as well. So impact on business is potentially significant. And of course, you know, one of the reasons for this reticence, I guess, in this caution from Google, a nice quote I saw, is that Google care about stock prices and how often ads are clicked on. So I think we can expect even more integration before SGE is live, and it's going to go slowly because they need to make sure that it works for them, but also, of course, for advertisers on their platform as well that they need to serve, and so they need to make sure the platform works incredibly well for them. So first part of this presentation, this webinar, is looking at direction of travel. And what I wanted to convey, I suppose, was that change is driven by an improved user experience. Being a digital agency person, a builder and designer of websites, better user experience always wins. It's like trying to beat gravity if you're trying to offer a worse experience and hope that you can attract customers. So Google are, impacted by generative search offering a better experience to users. And therefore they have to follow that direction of travel. They cannot fight that. This means that there are potentially significant implications for search businesses and for advertisers. And there is, frankly, quite a lot of uncertainty in the near to midterm. And the reason I initially gave this presentation was because I was surprised that there was minimal conversation about this when one thinks about how large the impact will be. So I wanted to try and elevate this to a broader audience and kind of get more people aware of what the impact might be, even if that might well be in 3 months' time. So we will see how things develop. Next, I want to talk about likely implications, I suppose. So, if the search experience changes, how does that affect me as an advertiser, and what will my world look like? And the likely impacts we know are, and there is some evidence around this, and this is where I am in that kind of opinion space as opposed to fact space, in order to try and predict what the impact is going to be like on organic traffic, but also on paid traffic as well. So what we know so far is the biggest impact is on informational searches. And when I say biggest impact, what I mean by that is how often the SGE box appears on the page. And it appears most on informational pages. And I have a chart coming up actually which expands upon that. It's served in approximately 90% of searches, as evidenced by people within looking at different keywords. And from Google SGE's lead, what she says is that the highest satisfaction is with a younger audience who really rate this, and I think it's really cool. So you're looking at a demographic there of 18 to 24. Bearing in mind it's a change to the environment, you would expect that to come from that demographic. People are embracing the use of follow-up questions. So people's behavior is changing to make most of what this experience gives and how that works. People are using longer and more conversational search terms. So people who are used to the technology are using search in a different way. And Google are seeing new queries that they've previously never seen before as well. And users are still able to find the ads above or below the SGE box, says Google. And I suspect that last statement is to reassure advertisers that people can still find your adverts. But the fact that the rollout is slow maybe makes me question actually how often they are clicking on those ads and what that looks like. I might be proved wrong. So my first prediction is that generative AI, I think, will lead to a fall in organic traffic. Okay, and the reason for this is simple, because when we think about generative AI in search, and these large language models have been called plagiarism engines. Effectively, the AI in the middle of that experience is plagiarizing all of the content on the web. All the content that we work so hard to create and to promote our businesses is being plagiarized and then packaged up and then presented to the user in the most interesting and useful, valuable way for the user. And therefore, we are going to move more towards this zero-click experience where the user gets the content and the information that they need directly from the search results page and does not need to go onto certain pages. When you think about the valuable content that we create being packaged up and presented by an AI, the act of then going to the website seems a little bit kind of bizarre and time-wasting. It does potentially help to offset the hallucination risk, just to kind of verify the source of that information. But we would expect, and I think is a reasonable prediction to make, that we would expect to see less traffic going to websites as one's queries is being answered within the search page. And we see evidence for that. At the back of this presentation, which, as Anne says, will be shared, I've got some further reading, and there's a link here, which is a really good article, which just came out, it's October last year, I think it was. But they're a good organisation, Search Engine Land. So they created an early attempt to kind of create an impact model so that they could look at what the impact would be across their users. They looked at 23 sites in the tech sector. Those sites typically have in monthly traffic value visitor levels of between 1,000 to 300,000 monthly visits. And on that link, there is an open source model where you can view this study. And what this showed is that they witnessed an 18 to a 64% drop in organic traffic, although one site did did manage that. So when we think about SGE being rolled out and drops of traffic of even the lower number there, sort of 18 to 20%, that's quite significant. And I think that there are many advertisers out there who may have a mild panic when you think about, you know, traffic might be dropping by those sorts of levels. I've seen other predictions as well, which have sort of less science behind them as well, that are predicting drops in traffic of between 15 to 35% as well, organic traffic when the SGE box is offered. So for me, I think this is quite large and this is quite significant news. There was a survey that came out just last week. Again, there's a link there, so you can go and look at this for yourself. And this looked at the percentage of queries that were impacted by SGE. That is to say, across these 9 segments and thousands of keywords within those 9 different industries, how often was the SGE box promoted and shown on that page. So you can see, if you find your sector, you can work out how many keywords or how many searches are likely to be impacted by the SGE box. They also put a figure on this of $40 billion of ad revenue within those search terms being impacted by the SGE box appearing within there as well. So the chance and the impact of this is potentially very high. And again, I'm going to go back to Victoria, to your question about hallucination. Healthcare is very high, and healthcare is one area where you probably don't want hallucinations in terms of offering advice back to people as well. So the fact that it was high within healthcare, and knowing Google as I know Google, gives me great confidence that they feel as though they are on top of the hallucination problem in terms of, you know, offering results and offering content to users within that space. So first prediction, and I've not heard any commentators who are going against this, is that SGE is going to lead to a significant drop-off in organic traffic, depending on your sector, depending on the keywords that you're promoting against. And that drop-off in traffic can be somewhere between, I don't know, 20 to potentially as high as 50%. This is when people look a bit panicked when I presented this within the conference. Next prediction is paid traffic, almost as a direct consequence of that, is likely to get more expensive. So I'm an economist by trade. And so economists, all we ever do in our lives is draw supply and demand curves. And so within the impact of SGE, I think it's reasonable to make these 2 statements. The first statement is that it is reasonable to expect demand to increase. If you are an advertiser, if you've seen your organic traffic drop, you are likely to want to go and replace that traffic because you've still got a business that needs fueling. And so there is going to be increased demand for paid traffic and for advertising from advertisers to replace that lost organic traffic. But what we're seeing is that there's a contraction of supply as well, because there is less ad revenue or less ad real estate that Google are finding within this page that they can kind of promote as well. When you get increase in demand and a contraction of supply, prices go up. So I think you're going to be, as advertisers, you're going to have to compete harder to buy traffic for your sites as well in the future. Again, this is me, this is my opinion, and there's limited evidence about this because it's not in the real world in terms of bidding models yet has it been impacted. So what do we do in this wildly kind of panic state? What tactics and strategies can we adopt to kind of offset this? For 2 main things, really. Firstly is prepare for change. We don't know when this will launch in the UK market or European markets, depending on your footprint of your business. But there are things that we can do now preparing for that change so we know where to go. And there are probably 4 tactics for improved ranking. And I'm sure Anne will have many strong views about what those tactics might be and how we can improve that. So firstly, prepare for change. Change can always be an opportunity. Okay, so as much as the overall is the average organic traffic might well drop, there will be some winners in there. And that study that I referenced back there, that does include, you know, one example where there's a large increase in traffic that a site benefited because their content was well geared towards a more generative kind of search term. So there is an opportunity to grow traffic within this, but I would expect it to be quite challenging. I believe that advertisers should invest the time now, get your team familiar with Google SGE, make sure everyone in your business who is relevant to this understands that, has logged in, has played with it, understands how that works as well. It's probably worth exploring Bing as a test bed. So Bing, of course, use Copilot now, and they have something very similar in there. How are you performing within that space? Can you optimize within that? And can we take the learnings that we take from optimizing within Bing, can we then potentially transfer those over to the Google world as well. I'd explore the SGE impact model. The article that I referenced has a model that you can play with, that you can kind of put your keywords in there, and it will predict what the impact will be on your business as well. I'd also monitor your keywords in SGE as well. So I would go into that SGE world, do search terms for your business and your keywords, and work out how often the SGE box is presented against your keywords and how you perform within that as well. So that will give you some understanding about what the impact will be. I'd also be cautious, I guess, about goal setting and KPIs against this rapidly changing background. So if you are an advertiser and you are engaging with an agency, you know, I would have very open conversations about how the remuneration model could work and how that could change in the future. I think if you're an agency, you know, it may well be that your performance is seen to drop for your advertisers. So again, you need to have that open conversation. If you're a marketing director, I'd have a conversation with your boss about your bonus this year as well, and make sure it's not linked to organic traffic, because that might be somewhat challenging come the end of the year if things do play out. So those are the things that I believe that you can do to prepare for change. But specific tactics. The fact of the matter is that good practice is good practice, and that will continue to be the case in this new SGE world. You know, EEAT, that will continue to carry weight, and there is evidence that that is not to change. The goal will become citations. In the SGE box, you know, effectively that becomes a top 3 ranking now, which is what we should be looking for. Although traffic may not reflect that because you've got this 0-click thing, but at least it promotes your brand in some way. Original, high-quality content will continue to have a great impact. So focus upon those areas. Tactic number 2 is optimize for longer, more specific search terms. So the evidence that we've seen is that, you know, coming from Google itself, very, very few press releases from Google about SGE, but the few bits of information that do leak out is that consumers are changing their behaviors when they are using SGE. They are using longer search terms. So content should develop beyond the commodity to provide more. And as an organization, you should start to obsess about the conversations. How do you promote yourself within that conversational space? So as I say, there's also evidence that Google's quoting word for word responses to complex questions. So potentially look to kind of develop and really exploit the long tail of content as well. And as I say, there is an opportunity to achieve wins within the model and citations, you know, by being in that in that carousel in the top right hand corner and those high profile areas. And there's quite a lot of evidence that the citations in the SGE space do not correlate with the top 10 results as well quite often. I think 40% of times they are actually, those citations are not in the top 10 links. So working out how to get within that space, which is to be more conversational as well. The importance of user intent. What we've seen with generative AI is that it's better understanding what the consumer is trying to achieve and then presenting content back against that. So user intent, which of course Google have always been very good at, will have an ever greater impact. So we need to accelerate our journey towards fulfilling that, understanding that intent, and then also providing content that fulfills against that. Competition's fierce there, of course. And frankly, within this space, this is when you start to get to the point where you need AI tools and you need to start to kind of explore what's out there. They become the minimum entry points if that's the place where you want to play, both in terms of discovering the user intent, but also organizing and creating your content at scale in order to respond to that as well. And lastly, of course, use generative AI yourself. You know, Google care about EEAT, which, thank you for the question, is experience, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. They don't care whether or not your content is created by AI. They care about EEAT. So, you know, use generative AI now to generate content, you know, to identify the highest value content, but also to create content at scale for you and for your organization. Personalization and context permutations become really important, because as you're exploring the long tail, you're almost trying to kind of consider how you can create one-to-one answers to people's questions as well. However, within that, always try and retain human oversight in terms of the content that you create. I do a lot of work with agencies, deployment and embracing AI, and the common view is absolutely use AI to generate content, always have human oversight of that content before published as well. So the 4 tactics are, good practice that we've learned and that we've developed, and the skills that we've learned over time continues to be good practice. Optimize for more specific search terms, embrace the importance of user intent, and use generative AI. In summary, SGE, hopefully, you can see now, sort of open eyes, is shaping up to be potentially the biggest Google update ever. And the stakes to that are therefore very high. They're incredibly high for Google. I think almost as demonstrated by the slow and very kind of considered rollout of the new interface. But the stakes also, of course, very high for the economy that relies on Google, us as advertisers or us as agencies within that as well. Our ability to buy customers and find customers for our fantastic products and services is potentially on the line here. So anybody who works within this space, I think it's an opportunity to kind of emerge out on top, but we sort of need to brace for impact as well. More knowledge, more understanding of what's out there, I think is kind of really what's key and would be my kind of core advice. Of course, the silver lining to this is that Google needs content creators, and so it needs to reward content creators. There is this symbiotic relationship, and valuable content will still be valuable content. And of course, there can be first mover advantages. So particularly if you're an agency, being an expert within the space and promoting yourself and your ability within this space can be highly valuable. If you're an advertiser as well, you can potentially move forward and gain competitive advantages against your clients by embracing the right tactics along the way as well. So that's sort of summary. Hopefully that's kind of relatively interesting. In terms of the deck, there is also further reading that I mentioned as well. So there's a few links which I think are interesting at the top. And that's it. So open up now to, I'm going to look at the chat now and look at the chat and we'll have a bit of a conversation and post some questions.
I probably need you to message me the handouts so I can, unless you can load them up and I can share them afterwards. That was really interesting. I've been worried about this for about 2 years now, about what's going to happen when the sort of ChatGPT AI that we were both researching way before ChatGPT was launched in November 2022, and what impact it's going to have. And it looks like our fears are sort of quite justified in the fact that there could be such a drop in organic traffic. I'll give you an example. For example, if I was looking in Google and I was saying, what software tools are there to help with my SEO? You'd have 4 ads at the top. You'd have 10 links or more. And then you can go to the next page and there'll be a load of directory sites with a load of comparisons. And there'll literally be 40 or so products that you could choose from. If you went and did that same search in ChatGPT on Bard, it would probably recommend SEMrush, SEO Monitor, and maybe 2 others, and that would be it. So the problem is how can you be the 2 or 3 that it recommends? And I don't think that's going to be an easy job. And obviously the bigger brands will be well established. So I think the rules of SEO are going to change considerably, and I'm quite concerned about what SEOs will do going forward. So I'd be really interested in your opinion on that. But before I say that, I just want to caveat that PPC world is changing in the opposite direction. With PPC, the automation means the content on the page or the website is more important. So my vision is that the SEOs that we have now will very much be trying to find out how to get into that data set. But also they'll be focusing in on the content on websites and SEO in the content of the websites, so the PPC people can get their links in the results. So I honestly think that agencies and people in digital marketing, those roles are going to become sort of all integrated, and it's going to be a completely different world to what it is now. So I don't know what other agencies think and what you think, Neil, but my gut feeling is our agency will look very, very different in 18 months' time. And we're obviously going through a process to prepare for that. But what's your opinion?
I think generally in terms of how AI is affecting all operations within agencies, I think things are going to change dramatically. I think in terms of impact of SGE, I think there's a whole new bunch of services that need to be considered, that need to be developed and need to be launched to generally support clients within that space. I think if I'm honest, I work, within Google. We should be, and generally we deliver trainings to partners, right? I am surprised that there is not yet a brief from Google to Premier partners to say this is how you should be working with SGE, this is how you prepare. Because I think there are going to be a bunch of advertisers who are potentially going to really lose out, and there's going to be a bunch of agencies who are going to sit in the middle of that, and they are not going to look great when they're talking to their clients as well.
Well, we've got a similar situation at the moment with all the privacy regulations, haven't we? They've suddenly introduced consent mode version 2, and if your website isn't comply with the GDPR and privacy, and so if your cookie consent box at the beginning doesn't turn off the cookies, or doesn't turn the cookies on until they give permission, your ads are going to stop. And I don't think anybody's talking about that either. So I do feel that a lot of people are a little bit behind the curve. You're getting a huge amount of love and likes and
I know
stuff
it's
going on,
like
and
a real party going on, isn't it?
I don't know whether somebody had their finger stuck on the button or whether they're liking what I was saying or they were just loving what you were saying. But let us take it, because we don't usually get as many of those things as possible.
I'm going to take all the credit. So
absolutely,
I've got some love now as well. It's all going very well. Are there any questions? I'm going to struggle to kind of pay attention to what's being said. Oh, there are many comments. If you have a really interesting question, add it again, because I might not find it within the long thing, the long list.
I've answered a few of them. There was quite a lot of concern about hallucinations, which I think is the reason why Google was so late releasing Bard. And then they basically had a panic attack when they saw how the impact of ChatGPT, which got something like 5 million sign-ups in the first 24 hours or something ridiculous. I can't remember the numbers. So I think Bard, Google was so paranoid about getting the information wrong. But I think with all the fake news and spam that's within the normal Google results, and the fact that content can be created en masse anyway, I think the control over whether content is true now has been lost forever. Particularly when you've got the social media platforms algorithms working on clickbait sort of philosophy of if you interact with it or you click on it, you're going to see more of it. So these content farms just make loads and loads of money out of advertising when people arrive to them. I also did a little bit on explaining what EAT was. There's a few people that obviously are involved in this sector and trying to understand what that will have and how to try and get into, to be actually have your website mentioned, which I think is really, and I think your advice about, following best practices and focusing on the long tail is quite interesting there. I absolutely agree with that.
I'd like to pick up on Adam Rowley. You made a comment about, I think people are now more likely to want answers straight away, such as planning a day out, meaning SGE will definitely disrupt the search space. I think that's true. And that's the point I wanted to make at the beginning. It's a better experience, and consumers' behavior is changing to adopt that as well. 10 blue links. We lived it for years and we thought it was great until we shown something else and we go like, oh, this is awful. Sometimes I have to click on 2 links to find out the information I'm looking for. And that's the challenge that they're responding to. Which then leads, Simon Johnson, your comment. It's like, well, how do you get your content to be within that space, right? But also, how do we as society make sure that the content in that space is true and of high value and doesn't come from some content farm or is bought or whatever else like that?
Well, there's also somebody else commenting about the fact you get into an echo chamber, because if the content of what's out in the web is generated by AI and then that's used to generate AI, you'll get into this sort of vicious downward cycle where quality content, you won't be able to tell anymore. But I'm with you on this about using generative AI and ChatGPT or whatever to create content for if you learn how to use prompting properly. But then you've got to edit it. And in fact, what we've got is, I'll just bring that up now. We've got a workshop. I just put a prompt. It should just appear now, which is we're doing a one-day workshop with on the 23rd of February you will just go to a landing page and you can just click back in. This is just so we've got a record if you're interested. If any of you are currently on our boot camps or started a boot camp in September, you'll get this for free. But if any of you are already working somewhere else or you're not involved with our boot camps, it's £100 for the day, reduced from 500. So I'll be doing in the morning all the practical prompting stuff, and then Martin, who some of you saw last week, will be giving lots of examples of tools that you can use. Some of them are free, some of them paid. While I'm doing this offer, what I will do is I'll also ask you to give a lovely review for Annika, and please mention Neil. So if you can mention Neil and say what a great talk he did.
We'll just quote the party and the hearts at the bottom, yeah, and we'll go.
Yeah, well, I think you should take a screenshot of that actually, because we don't usually get as many as that. I don't know if that's worked. Did that work?
I should reveal that I was checking my hair before we kind of admitted anyone, and I admitted that I'm actually quite vain as I was trying to do this. So yeah, this is good in my mind, just in case there's any doubt. I'd like to pick up on Michael's point as well about citations. You know, if Google uses real content and cites it, does that mean that OpenAI is in trouble for not citing root content? So I think the reason Google use citations is because it's to offset hallucinations and offset consumer fear of hallucinations if it links through to the actual content. Bing also uses citations now, and where relevant, and ChatGPT do too. So I think it's more of a thing. But as I say, having worked with Google in there as part of their, as a consumer of Google products, actually as part of their startup, looking at prompt engineering from a development side as well, and seeing the work that they do to offset hallucinations, it's more and more robust. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, if you haven't already downloaded the new version of Bing, you can automatically get ChatGPT in there. It's not the same. It doesn't work quite the same as if you've got the OpenAI version of ChatGPT, which if you've got the free version is 3.5. I would also definitely recommend you spend the $20 a month to get the pro version, because you can get citations from there really easily. It's got a load of plugins. There's the shop, and you can attach files. And what I'll be doing is, before my workshop, I'll be doing a free 1-hour webinar just to introduce some of those practical changes. So I definitely recommend that. But you'll see if you use the Bing version, you do get the citations actually there. And I think some of those will be where we'll almost go back to paid links within text. I think that's probably, you know, you're gonna have sponsored links. So if you've got a load of text from AI, there'll be some of those links will be sponsored. They won't be free anymore. So I think that's probably what's going to happen. I'm just going to bring, I think I screwed up bringing the other one up. I don't know whether you saw it. So I'm just going to try again, because I think I made a mess of that. Let me just, I accidentally ticked the wrong box. So hopefully, that's more like it. I keep on saying I need to change this graphic. Is there any other questions that we need to talk about? I think the $100 question is how the hell you get your website into the data sets for the things you want to do. And the other thing that's really interesting, how the hell are we going to measure this? You know, is Search Console going to show, or analytics is going to show when you were in a standard link or when you were in an SGE link? I think that's going to be really interesting, because I still don't think we've got that much clarity over voice search versus text search either. So it's definitely going to be all change.
Yeah, I think interesting times. I just want to make a little comment about your ChatGPT prompting course. I was at an event last night, which is kind of more focused on AI within agencies. Fascinating stuff. I mean, I'm a heavy user of GPT, but fascinating stuff that people are using around content generation, using just simple ChatGPT, developing kind of stuff that outperforms, from my perspective, things like Jasper and Copy AI, you know, which are specific content tools around that. So yeah, just some of the prompting stuff I think can be really, really interesting and just generate so much value so quickly. So
yeah, I mean, interestingly, we were doing some stuff yesterday, and when we were trying to, you know, I think it was a silly thing, like we said, oh, let's go and see what we've missed. What's the role of an operation director? Or I want to put it in my business plan. And we then realized that actually you needed to change the prompt to say, I'm running a digital marketing agency. I am the operations director. What additional things? Because the first thing included things like stock and a whole load of stuff. So if you can't write the prompt correctly, you can't get the information out that you need. And that's really what the additional training is going to about.
Well, and using ChatGPT to write the prompt.
Yes, of course.
Obviously.
There's so many free guides up there as well. Something's gone down the wrong way. Is there any other questions? Did you want to quickly message me where I can get the handout, or I can send it out?
I just emailed it to you, actually. So
let me see if I can do that.
It's a slightly updated version. I think the original one I put in there when I'd updated the slides from LDL. So this one's just slightly updated.
Yes, it's definitely slightly better. Well, if you could just answer a few more questions, what I'll do is just do that now.
Well, firstly, I mean, thank you, Michael, for your reviews. I say that. I hope that they were broadly positive, so that's good. There was a comment as well from Simon as well. You know, I consider myself to be an optimistic realist. Okay, so I was talking to businesses yesterday about how agencies may not exist in 3 years' time, but hey, this might be good, right? Because more leisure time. But yeah, I hope often with these changes that we get in technology that we can get to a better world where you do get more authentic reviews and advocacy, and you know the results that are surfaced to consumers are of higher value. So you know I think we need to hope that is the direction of travel that we see, and I believe that's achievable, I guess.
So I've just shared the other downloads. If you guys could just pop up to Hangouts and see if you can see it, please, and let me know that you can see it. That would be amazing.
And you'll share contact details. So if you want to sort of,
put them in the chat, Neil. Put them in the chat, Neil.
In the chat. Here we go.
Now we do get a lot of people that disappear at exactly 10 o'clock because they've got other meetings to go. So I'd like to thank everybody for their help. The stuff that I mentioned about the privacy and consent, cookie consent, we're covering next Friday with Ed, which I think is one of the most important things that's happening this year if you've got a website, because effectively you could be in serious trouble for not running your website effectively, and it's going to have all sorts of impact on anything else that you're doing, including your tracking, your analytics and your ads. So probably a very important website for you all to go. I assume because there's nothing to the contrary that the handouts are working. Can somebody tell me can you download it? Can you see the second handout if you go there, Neil?
Yep.
Excellent. Cool. Well, unless there's anything else, I think you need to take a screenshot of the amount of love that you're getting. The video will be available. Oh, you might as well wait for a few more. The video will be available in about an hour. But otherwise, have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you next Friday. Thanks so much, Neil. Really appreciate you joining us.
I mean, thanks for the opportunity to talk about this. I find it really interesting, and thank you to the audience and all the really interesting questions as well. So,
okay, if any of you can't find out the handout too, I'll just stay on for a little bit longer. If you refresh your browser and go back in, you should there. So I'll pause the recording, but I'll stay around so you can just go back in. So thanks everybody from the recording perspective.